All right, so you're prepping for an ICT Accessibility Tester interview and want to really make a good impression.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? You get to show off everything you know and how much you care about making the digital world more inclusive.
Exactly. So before we even get to those interview questions, maybe we should step back for a second, just get a feel for what this role really even is. You know,
Yeah.
I was looking at the RoleCatcher Career Guide, and it seems like an ICT accessibility tester is almost like a digital detective working for inclusivity.
Oh, I love that analogy. That's spot on. You really are evaluating everything, websites, apps, software, even whole systems to make sure they are easy to use for everyone, especially people with disabilities.
Yeah, and that means diving deep into things like making sure they work with screen readers and keyboard navigation and stuff like color contrast. It's a lot, making sure there's digital equality for everyone.
It is a lot, and it's important work. And you know what? This is actually a field with a lot of job openings. The RoleCatcher Guide says it's in high demand across all sorts of industries. You could end up working in a regular office or even remote.
Oh, wow. So you could make a difference right from your own home office.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, definitely. And it's not just a stepping stone either. There's real opportunity for growth in this field. The RoleCatcher Guide lays it all out. Like, you might start as an entry-level tester, right? Just finding problems and recommending fixes. But as you get more experience, you could move into a more junior role where you're actually developing test plans and working directly with developers and mastering all the accessibility guidelines.
So basically, you become more of a leader and strategist as you go.
Yeah, exactly. And once you get to a senior level, you could be leading whole projects, defining the strategies for whole organizations, even becoming an advocate for inclusivity more broadly.
Now, that sounds pretty impactful.
Yeah.
But I imagine there must be some tough parts to this job, too.
Oh, of course. Like any job, there are challenges. One of the big ones is just keeping up with all the changes. Those accessibility standards, they're always evolving. And you'll definitely run into some really complex technical problems, and then there's always deadlines and stuff like that.
Okay, so we have a pretty good idea of what this role is all about. Now let's get to the really important part, the interview questions. RoleCatcher has tons of these, and their AI can even help tailor responses for specific job postings.
It's like having a personal interview coach right there in your computer.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say the interviewer asks you that classic question. Can you explain your experience with accessibility testing? How would you even start to answer that?
That's your chance to really shine. Don't just give some generic answer like, oh, yeah, I've done accessibility testing. Talk about specifics, like real projects you've worked on. Even personal projects count, or volunteer stuff where you've used these skills.
So paint a picture of your expertise.
Exactly. Don't just list things off. Tell them about the methods you've used, the tools, any challenges you had to overcome. You know, it's quality over quantity here.
Oh, that's a good point. And didn't you say the RoleCatcher AI can even suggest which experiences to highlight based on the specific job description?
Yes, it's super helpful. It's like it can read the mind of the hiring manager.
That's amazing. Okay, next question. What about this one? Can you explain the difference between WCAG 2.0 and 2.1? Now, this is where I might need a little refresher myself.
Oh, that's a really common question. Don't worry. The important thing is to show them that you really get the latest accessibility standards. Think about the real-world implications of these updates. How do they actually change how you do your testing?
So not just like a textbook definition, but more like how it actually applies in practice.
Exactly. And again, RoleCatcher can give you really specific examples and talking points for the specific job you're going for.
Wow, that's really useful. Okay, let's get even more practical. How would you answer this one? How do you conduct manual accessibility testing?
For that one, you really want to walk them through your whole process, like step by step. Mention any particular tools or techniques that you like to use,
Yep.
and definitely give some concrete examples. You need to prove that you've actually done this stuff, not just that you know the theory.
So like if I usually use a certain screen reader when I'm testing, this is where I'd mention that.
Absolutely. And you can even explain why you like that particular tool and how it helps you find accessibility issues.
Okay, starting to get the hang of this. Now, what about automated testing? I bet they might ask, can you explain how you use automated testing tools for accessibility testing?
That's where you get to show off all the tools you know, talk about the ones you're familiar with, what they're good at, what their limitations are, and how you actually use them in your work.
So, for example, if I used a certain tool to test for color contrast problems, I could talk about how that tool works and what benefits it has.
Exactly. You want to show them that you're well-rounded and that you can use both manual and automated approaches effectively.
This is so helpful. RoleCatcher really helps to break these questions down and make them way less scary.
It's all about practice and being prepared. Speaking of practice, let's try some of those scenario-based questions they love to ask.
Sounds good. What if they say something like, how would you test a website for keyboard accessibility?
Okay, now we're talking. This is where you get into the details, like what exact elements would you test? What tools would you use? Remember, it's all about paying attention to the details and thinking about the needs of real users.
So I might talk about things like making sure the tab order is correct and that you can reach and use all the interactive elements with just the keyboard. And what about those keyboard traps? I'd make sure to check for those too.
Perfect. Those are all great things to mention. You could even talk about specific assistive technologies that you might consider during testing. Things like screen magnifiers or on-screen keyboards.
So I'm showing them I'm thorough and that I'm aware of all the different needs people might have.
Exactly. And the best part is RoleCatcher's AI can actually give you even more specific examples and insights based on what's in the job description.
Wow, that's incredibly helpful. I already feel so much more prepared. Now, what about testing with a screen reader? I imagine that's something they'll ask about.
You bet. They might say something like, how would you test a website for screen reader accessibility? And it's the same idea. Just walk them through your process step by step and highlight how thorough you are.
Okay, so I talk about testing the heading structure, making sure all the images have alt text, and that all the interactive elements are clearly labeled so the screen reader can understand them.
Perfect. You're showing them that you know how screen readers work and how to make sure a website is truly accessible for someone who uses one.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Mhm.
I bet they'd also ask about testing for color contrast and video accessibility and even accessibility for people with cognitive disabilities. So I just use that same detailed approach every time.
You got it. Each question is a chance for you to show off your knowledge and experience.
And RoleCatcher can help me tailor my answers to each question and each job posting right.
Absolutely. It's like having a personalized study guide and feedback system all in one.
It's amazing. This is making me feel so much more confident. What other tricky questions might they ask?
Good question. Let's dive into some of those more challenging scenarios just to make sure you're ready for anything they throw at you. Okay, so what about this? How would you test a website for video accessibility? I think they might throw that one at you.
Video accessibility.
No.
Okay, so we're talking about making sure everyone can enjoy those videos, right? Whether they have a disability or not.
Exactly. You got to think about things like captions and transcripts and audio descriptions. Those are essential for people who can't hear well or who have trouble seeing.
Right, so I'd want to explain how I'd check if those captions are accurate and in sync and if the transcripts are easy to find. And also make sure the audio descriptions give enough information for someone who can't actually see the video.
Exactly. You're on the right track. And you know, it wouldn't hurt to mention any specific software or tools you might use to test all that stuff.
It's like I always say, the right tool for the right job. Show them you know what you're doing.
Exactly. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. How about this one? Can you explain how you would ensure that a website is accessible to users with cognitive disabilities?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Cognitive disabilities, that's a pretty broad category, right?
Yeah, you're right. It covers a lot of ground. So this question is really about showing that you know how to make a website clear and easy to navigate and free of distractions that could be tough for people with cognitive disabilities.
Okay, I think I get it. So I talk about things like using simple language, keeping the content organized, and to the point, giving clear instructions and avoiding layouts or interactions that are too complicated.
Yeah, those are all good points. And you could also mention things like consistent navigation, predictable page structures, and using visual cues to help people understand the content.
It's almost like you're trying to make the website as user-friendly as possible for everyone, not just people with disabilities.
Right. Accessibility is good for everyone. Now, what if they ask you, what experience do you have with using or testing for compatibility with various assistive technologies?
Now this is where I can really shine. I talk about all my experience with screen readers, magnifiers, voice recognition software, all those tools that help people with disabilities use digital content.
Exactly. This is your chance to highlight your hands-on experience. Have you used these tools yourself? Have you tested websites or apps specifically for compatibility?
And if I have any certifications related to assistive technologies or accessibility testing, this is the time to bring those up right.
Definitely. Certifications show that you're serious about professional development. Okay, now let's say they ask about a technology you're not so familiar with. What would you do?
Well, I'll be honest. I wouldn't try to fake it. I just say that I haven't used that specific technology that much, but that I'm always eager to learn new things.
That's a great approach. It shows that you're proactive and dedicated to lifelong learning, which is super important in this field.
And hey, RoleCatcher can help me stay up to date on all those new technologies, right?
Absolutely. They have a ton of resources on assistive technologies and testing techniques.
Okay, I'm feeling way more confident about handling those technical questions now. But what about those questions that are less about specific tools and more about problem solving or working with other people?
That's a great point. They might give you a scenario like, imagine you're working on redesigning a website, and the developers don't want to add certain accessibility features. What would you do?
Ah, okay. So this is where I have to show off my communication and people skills.
Exactly. They're trying to see how you handle difficult situations and if you can advocate for accessibility while still working effectively with different teams.
So I'd want to show them that I'd start by trying to understand why the developers are hesitant. Maybe they're worried about deadlines or budget constraints or technical limitations.
Right. By understanding their perspective, you can try to find common ground and work towards a solution together.
Then I might show them some data or research that supports the need for accessibility. Maybe even talk about the legal risks or the business benefits of reaching a wider audience.
That's a great strategy. You're backing up your arguments with solid evidence and connecting accessibility to the bigger picture.
And maybe I could even suggest some alternative solutions or compromises that meet everyone's needs.
Exactly. That shows you're a problem solver, not just someone who's there to enforce the rules. You're thinking outside the box and collaborating to find the best possible outcome.
This is so helpful. It seems like with a lot of these questions, there's no single right answer. It's more about how you think and approach the problem.
You got it. They want to see how you think, how you communicate, how you handle challenges. They're looking for someone who's passionate about accessibility and who can work well with others to make it happen.
It's like they're looking for someone who's not just going to check boxes, but who's going to be a real advocate for inclusivity within the organization.
Exactly. They want someone who's going to champion accessibility and make a real difference. Now remember, even if you totally blank on a question, don't freak out. It's okay to take a breath and ask for a moment to think.
So I could say something like, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second.
Absolutely. And if you're still drawing a blank, try relating the question to something you do know. Maybe talk about a previous experience or a concept you understand. Even if you don't have the perfect answer, you can still show them how you think and that you're willing to learn.
It's all about staying calm and collected and showing them you're eager to grow and learn.
Exactly. They're not just looking at what you know right now, but also at your potential. Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about one more important thing, researching the company.
Yes. It's not just about the job itself. It's also about understanding the company's culture and values.
And RoleCatcher can help you with that too. They have a huge database of employer information. You can research their commitment to diversity and inclusion, their accessibility initiatives, even their overall company culture.
So I can see if they actually walk the walk when it comes to inclusivity.
Exactly. This research can help you tailor your answers to align with their values and show that you're genuinely interested in working for them.
This has been so incredibly helpful. I feel so much more prepared to answer those tough questions and show them how passionate I am about accessibility.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, the more you prepare and the more familiar you are with the resources RoleCatcher offers, the more confident you'll feel going into that interview.
I feel like I have everything I need to nail this interview.
You absolutely do. Go get them.
So any other last-minute tips or insights before we wrap up this deep dive?
You know, one more thing that can sometimes throw people off is when they start asking about those soft skills. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Those are always tough.
Right. Like they might say something like, tell me about a time you ran into a really difficult accessibility problem. How did you deal with it?
So it's one of those behavioral questions. They want to know how I think on my feet and how I solve problems.
Exactly. It's a chance to really show off your analytical skills, your creativity, your problem-solving ability.
Okay, so let me think. Maybe I could talk about a time I found a really complex accessibility issue while I was doing some testing, like maybe a website with terrible keyboard navigation. I'd explain how I figured out what the problem was, what tools or techniques I used, and how I communicated it to the development team.
Perfect example. And don't forget to tell them how it all turned out. Did your solution actually improve things for users? Did it lead to any positive changes in the organization?
Right. I need to show them I can do more than just find problems. I can actually help create solutions.
That's the idea. Now here's another one they might ask. How do you stay up to date on the latest accessibility trends and technologies?
Oh, that's easy. I'd talk about how much I love learning new things. I'd Mention all the resources I use, like the W3C website, accessibility blogs, industry conferences, online courses, you name it.
Excellent. And you know what else you could mention? RoleCatcher. Their platform has tons of up-to-date information on industry trends, new technologies, all the latest accessibility guidelines. It's amazing.
It really is like a one-stop shop for everything accessibility related.
Totally. Okay, one last question. This one can really make you stand out. Why are you passionate about accessibility?
Ah, yes. The passion question. Time to let my heart speak.
Exactly. This is your moment to connect with the interviewer on a human level. Show them you're not just in it for the paycheck. You genuinely care about making a difference.
So I could talk about some personal experiences, maybe a time when I saw how inaccessible technology can really shut people out. Or maybe I'd talk about my belief that everyone deserves equal access to information and opportunities no matter what.
Those are great examples. Just be yourself. Let your passion and empathy shine through.
I'm realizing that a lot of these questions aren't really about proving you have all the technical knowledge. It's more about showing who you are as a person and what you care about.
You're absolutely right. Technical skills are important, of course. But so are things like empathy, good communication skills, and a genuine passion for creating a more inclusive world.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel so much more prepared and confident about this interview. RoleCatcher has been a lifesaver. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done without their resources.
And don't forget about their AI features. They can help you with everything from tailoring your resume to practicing your answers to even researching the company to see if it's a good fit for you. It's like having a personal career coach in your pocket.
I feel like I have all the tools and the knowledge I need to totally ace this interview. Thanks to you and RoleCatcher.
You're very welcome. Just remember, preparation is key. The more you practice and the more familiar you are with RoleCatcher, the better you'll do. You got this.
So to everyone listening out there, remember this isn't just about prepping for an interview. It's about empowering yourself to make a real difference in the world.
The world of digital accessibility is always changing, so stay curious, keep learning, and never stop believing in your ability to make a positive impact.
Until next time, keep diving deep.